from the Art of Intuition, and today we are going to talk about consciousness and how we pay for it and how much we have to pay for and how does it work. Actually, I was watching one of those videos where they do makeup looks and they do the high-end makeup and then they try to copy it with like a lower cost makeup, and see if they can get the same look. So I was watching one of those and I kind of thought, what a fun idea for a video. So let's just see if we can do it. Okay. Money is such a big focus for us during a lot of our ascension process. It goes in and out of focus as we go. And I'm going to say it goes in and out of focus because there are times when we'll have money to do certain things, there'll be times we don't have money to do certain things, there'll be times we're called to do things that are going to cost a lot of money and we can get very uncomfortable with that. So there's a lot of different phases to the whole money thing. I don't even want to call it abundance because when you say abundance, technically abundance, part of abundance is just the feeling we get abundant inside with ourselves, and then money can follow that and will follow that. But abundance is not money. And when you say abundance, that's usually what people go to. So today I'm going to say specifically money. And what do we do? What do we do? Do we have to go to these expensive retreats? Do we have to go to these really expensive things? If we don't have the money, what do we do? What can we do to augment these things? If we can't, I'm going to say can't, but can't is different than it's not a priority, right? I see a lot of people say, I'll give you, a lot of people say they don't have the money to do something, right? And they don't want to spend the money on that. But I'll see them then spend the money on something else, like vacations. Or I remember I visited someone who just bought probably a $4 million home. And I bought them an Andara for their house. And she was like, oh, I hope you're just going to give that to me because I couldn't buy that. I couldn't pay for it. When they literally just bought a $4 million house. So part of it in the beginning for a lot of us, it's we just don't value it. And when I talk about valuing it, our human consciousness is never going to value it, right? So you're going to have a phase in this where your human consciousness won't value it anyway. And that's when we get hit back with that a lot because we didn't value it. Somebody else is not going to value it either because it's almost a karmic retribution for us not valuing it. And I can remember when I was thinking the same thing, when I would see how much somebody charged for something like a session, about regarding ascension, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so much money. I can't believe anyone would pay for that. So it's kind of my own karmic retribution coming back with a lot of things you deal with, and I've dealt with since then, about charging money. And a lot of human consciousness, there's this misconception that it shouldn't cost money. It shouldn't cost money to do any of this. You shouldn't charge money to do any of this. And I remember being told that, and I was like, well, do you work for free? I mean, do you take the skill set you have and don't charge money for it? And of course they're like, well, no. And I'm like, well, it's kind of the same thing. People who do charge for certain services in ascension or certain services about activating your consciousness or expanding your consciousness, expanding your knowledge, they've achieved a certain level of consciousness to be able to activate other people. They've dedicated time to that. They've dedicated their life to that. That was their sole agreement when they came here, to do that, to be one of the pioneers, to be one of the front runners of doing that type of thing. So it is a job that just doesn't have a human value. You're not going to find it on Indeed.com. It's a different type of thing. You're not going to find it there, and it's not going to be valued by human consciousness. Even to me, even people who were in the fourth dimensional consciousness really did not value it to the extent, unless they were trying to get something out of it. And I want to say that because a lot of times on my videos, I'll get spammed with comments regarding spells. I'll see that one a couple of times. I'll have to go back and people will spam it with spells or find your true love and all these kind of witchcrafty things and Wiccan kind of stuff. And that is actually a whole activation in itself. When we start getting to alchemy, we get into wizard energy, we get into Merlin energy. So there's a pure part of that energy, but a lot of this is sort of taking taking advantage in a sense, but it's also, there's a part of that where it's a taking advantage from one side. There's a part of it when we pay for those things, when we're trying to get something out of it, when we're trying to understand something. It's also us learning, don't do that in one hand. And it's also us getting activated in a different hand, where we can look at this stuff and go, okay, Kevin, I did see something there. Like, that did help me understand something. That did activate a consciousness in me. Because as we go through our ascension and our awakening, we're just activating the consciousness we have inside. No one is gifting you consciousness in a sense. They're just activating what you have. They're getting you to this consciousness level where you can see it for yourself. You'll unlock something within yourself. So there are going to be times when, in the beginning, you're going to fall into, like, there's going to be different categories all along the way. And some people might start in one different category than I started in, and someone might end in a different category. Well, we really never end, but they might be now in a different category. So I'm not saying all these are going to line up linearly, but there'll be different parts and pieces along the way. Where can you do it if you don't have any funds to pull from, right? What do? Now, you'll find if you ask your universe to bring you conscious people, if you ask the universe to bring you whatever can activate you, you'll be surprised what just shows up. You know, what shows up in your YouTube feed, what shows up in your Instagram, in the algorithm. All of a sudden, you can get spammed with a lot of stuff. And you'll find yourself just listening to all this free content. I know that was one thing I did in the beginning. I would listen to a lot of the free content. And it was activating me, and I was getting more and more kind of through my awakening. But I will say there was a part before my awakening where we might get into things that we give our power, we kind of outsource consciousness in a sense. I did a video about outsourcing consciousness where we're basically, we're paying other people to activate our consciousness, right? And we also outsource our consciousness from a human consciousness too. We can outsource higher consciousness where we're paying for those activations. And even not even paying for them in the beginning, you just might be listening to free content, but you're still outsourcing that consciousness. You can't maybe see it from that space yet. You can't see it from that frequency yet. So you're getting someone else who can, but it's activating that frequency within you. Reiki is the same way. It's activating that higher consciousness frequency within you. You're just utilizing someone else to do that. Human consciousness is the same way. If we don't understand something, like say you don't understand, let's say you get if we're going to go completely human consciousness for just this example. If you get a new medication from a doctor and you don't know, what it does or what it is, or you want to look at it in more depth, you're going to get on the internet and research that. That's just kind of the same thing. You're outsourcing that information. You're looking somewhere else to get it. And when I say outsource, that's what I'm talking about. You're going somewhere else to get the information. Higher consciousness can be the same way for a while, and it will be. Because we can't get there unless we get activated with higher consciousness information. We can't start to activate and unlock it within ourselves. So when you're first coming through and you're in a lot of fourth dimensional consciousness, so whatever pushed you through, whether it was just complete degradation of your human realities and you're just getting pushed through that way, whether you're getting pushed through, it does kind of feel like our universe is kind of pushing us through the door. A relationship that failed. If you were big into your twin flame matrix, and that was a complete debacle and caused us to get into all this stuff. I did a video a couple of days ago and I mentioned telepathy. Telepathy is kind of the gateway into getting us into a lot of that type of the energetics behind things, but we're trying to manipulate with it. We're trying to kind of utilize it to get what we want out of it. There is not a purity to that. Even the word telepathy, it has that distortion to it. So when I talk about just reading our energetic fields, and you'll be able to read other people's energetic fields when you get to certain spaces within your consciousness to do that, it's a different energy attached to that. But you're going to find you'll get into a lot of these things and you'll pay money for those things. You might go to a tarot reader and pay money to see how this relationship ends with someone. It's still going to be an activation of your consciousness. And it's also going to show you, don't give your power away to someone else to tell you what's going to happen here. You haven't created the future yet, so why do you want to go read one? The only thing they're going to tell you is, this is the most likely one. It doesn't mean they don't have a visibility to see. They will have a visibility to see, but they can only see the level of consciousness that they're currently setting at. And they're going to see the strongest energy toward that consciousness. toward one timeline. If you shift your frequency, you're in a whole different timeline. You know, if you start changing what you're doing in this moment, the whole thing unravels. That's why for a lot of us, even, and I have been to tarot card readers before. I wouldn't sit there and say I had not been. Back in my earlier days, I went quite a bit. I don't know if I went quite a bit, but I did listen to quite a bit, and I paid for a couple. But it was when I was trying to figure out what's going to happen here, what's going to happen here. You know, about 10 years ago, when you're really trying to kind of get a handle on what else is going on here. You know, it's funny because in the beginning we'll pay for that stuff because we want to get something out of it, and we'll fork over money for this stuff. I remember I got one reading when this lady told me that it would cost another $900 for her to meditate for 24 hours to figure out exactly the right course of action. And I remember even in my human consciousness thinking that just sounded like a scam, and I was like, okay, yeah, we're not doing that. I was like, okay, we're gonna not do that. But in your early phases, you might be, I'm going to use the word susceptible. It is an activation there for you, but you're also trying to buy something back into your life. You know, you're trying to buy certain things. And you're also later going to be buying into realities. So I'm going to touch on that. I'll probably try to save that to the end, but there is a part where we do that too. So you might go through phases where you're willing to spend a lot of money because you're going to get something hardcrete out of it, right? Concrete. I guess hardcrete's a new word. Concrete out of it. Your boyfriend's going to come back. You know, we're going to get our job back. You're going to get the woman of your dreams. You're going to get your dream job. You're going to get the car you want, whatever it is. You're going to invest in maybe a lot of books. You're going to go to a lot of seminars. You might go through the whole Abraham Hicks, place. And not to say none of these are all activations. They're all going to be activating your consciousness. But you're going to be paying for these when you're in a lot of these places, not to activate your consciousness. You're paying for them because you want an end goal here. You want an end game here. You want to know how to get your twin flame back, or you want to know how to manifest money. You want to know how to do these things. So your universe is using these things for you to now pay for because there's something you can tangibly see, right? There's something you can tangibly get to, and that's where you're going to pay for them. That is still a very fourth dimensional. Your human consciousness is still kind of in there. You have 1 foot in the fifth dimension and 1 foot in the third dimension. So you'll find in those phases, when you're in those moments, you're going to pay money for that stuff. You're going to fork it over because there's something you want to get out of it. There's still the distortion to it. Now, you're still getting your consciousness activated. You're still going up the frequency chain. And eventually, the longer you hold that consciousness, you're going to bring your body frequency up. Because the whole point of this is to bring your body frequency up. Higher consciousness, holding it is the issue. Hitting on it here and there, that's not the really challenging part or the hard part. Holding it and living it and embodying it and getting your body frequency to that consciousness, that's what embodiment is. That's what ascension is. That's what that means. You're ascending your body to a higher consciousness. So when you're in that phase, you're going to put the money out. And normally you'll find you're going to have the money because you're going to still be in a lot of the human world and maybe in your human job. And I'm just going to say human consciousness job. Any job you can make higher consciousness, but I feel like after a time we all feel called to leave kind of a lot of those more typical jobs behind because we realize our consciousness and body frequency get to such a point that they start to tie us back into the human world and that human consciousness, those realities, and we have to break free from those. So eventually, I feel like everyone will kind of move away from those. There'll be times when you're going to be still in them. I was still fairly along in my ascension, and I still had a more typical human consciousness job in finance for years, even through my ascension. I was going through different parts of my heavier parts of ascension in that point, my first few years of it. But I still did that until it became clear that, and your universe will make that clear. The job will be ripped, you'll just feel very strong. You're supposed to go a different way. So there are times you're going to fork over a lot of money. You remember that's going to be in the beginning, and you're going to have a lot of money to fork over. You'll have some kind of carrot dangling and what you think you're going to get back from it. You might feel after a while when a lot of those things don't work, or they worked for a while, and then everyone's like, why does it stop working? It'll work for a while because your universe is trying to show you there's something here. If it never works, then everyone would say, screw this, and go right back into the human realities. you get a little bit of success because your universe is trying to open you up to this is possible. This is really what's going on. Go deeper into this rabbit hole, Don't go back. Keep going. So you'll find it works for a while. And then a lot of the stuff that used to work doesn't work anymore. One, it becomes too distorted and there's so much lack energy still involved in it, and we have to clear so much of our stuff to kind of get to that next level and get to that next level of consciousness, that next level of purity in a sense, to bring forth more of our gifts and more of our knowledge and more of our higher consciousness information to kind of bring that stuff through. So we're going to then go through some periods where we might not have a lot of money to invest in it. So you might be pulling on a lot of free stuff. You might be watching a lot of free content, and I'm really getting into the free content, and that's activating you and activating you and activating you. And you'll find you're going to gravitate more toward the free content that's not promising anything. It's not going to be promising you're going to get that car, you're going to get the girl, you're going to get whatever it is you're trying to get to. It's going to be the free content where you're kind of interested in it, but you don't know if you're willing to pay for it. Because when you start listening to certain content, it's not going to be promising anything. It's going to be activating you. So you're going to listen to it and you're going to be more and more into it. And then you're going to reach a phase. So there is the free content out there. And you can utilize this and utilize this and utilize this. I know so many people in the space I'm in that have there's thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of high frequency content out there. You have to maybe make sure you ask your universe and tell your universe that's what you want. And you'll feel it when you listen to the person, where they're coming from. After a while, you'll be able to hear it in the voice. You'll be able to see, kind of where their consciousness is. I can listen to anybody and kind of get an idea of kind of where they are in their journey. And if it's something I want to listen to. And sometimes I'll listen to stuff just because it's something I feel called to listen to. And it might just be one word they say in there and I'll be like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Or it'll unlock something. So if you feel called to listen to it, listen to it. You'll find you're going to change as you go. And there's some stuff that'll interest you and some stuff that won't. Then you're going to go into another phase where you kind of feel you want to go farther, and then there might be a paywall there. I want to have a session with this person. I want to buy one of these classes. But I'm kind of don't want to put the money in. I'll see that quite a bit. And I remember I kind of used to do a lot of the same thing. And when you're in those phases, a lot of times if you ask your universe to bring you the money for these things, if it's aligned to do them, you'll have the money to do them. And you might be able to get deeper into stuff and deeper into the activations. There's also a test of will you pay for consciousness. That's a big test for us, because until we'll pay for it, we are holding ourselves back. We're kind of digging ourselves trench in a hole because it's worth it, but it's not worth it that much to me. I don't want to pay that amount for it, even though it could maybe quantum jump you 2 or 3 years in your journey. A lot of us will be like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to pay that. So there'll be a test. Will you pay for it? And if you won't pay for it, when years down the road, if you're offering something similar, will people want to pay for what you're charging later on? And it's like I said, it's like karmic slap that'll come back and get us sometimes. Because when we were in that consciousness, we didn't want to pay for it either. So we do kind of see that. So then you're going to be in that phase. Wait, I have the money, but maybe this is my rent money, but I feel very strongly I'm supposed to do this. And a lot of times that'll open stuff up, like we'll pay for it and then money will just come in from different places, maybe double or triple what we did. People would say that to me, and I don't know if I believe that. Every time I did it, that's what happened. Every time I paid for something to further my soul, I actually paid for it, I jumped. I would get the money back, the money would come in for me to pay for it. Or if I had the money in my bank account to pay for it, then I would get the money back, immediately. So it was kind of funny how that worked, because your universe is saying, we'll take care of you if you keep going. Then there's going to be a phase where when you're going through what people call the eye of the needle, when you're completely leaving human realities behind, and we can't kind of take any of that money with us, where we might not have hardly any money. And if we are involved in a lot of groups or classes, we might have to drop out of those. And there's a reason for that, though, because we have to be able to go on our own. We can't become a sovereign being if we're listening to other people, or we're listening to someone who we think they know more than we do. We can't become a sovereign being like that. We have to be on our own for a while. So there'll be a lot of times you might have guides. Humans are going to call them teachers. Souls are going to call them guides, where we're really into what they're saying. But we might become too dependent on them. It's kind of we become too dependent. We keep going and listening to everything they say, and we're hanging on every word they say. And we can't grow on our own. So there'll be a time when you'll be shown to grow on your own. Leave that stuff behind for a while. Don't be dependent on anybody else. It's just you and your universe showing you what to do next. So you're going to go through that kind of phase. And then we're going to get to different phases where you're going to start to see money come back in. And then you're going to decide, okay, now what do I want to spend the money on? Now what is the next thing for me to go to my next level, to my next space, to my next part of consciousness? So there's always going to be stuff available to do it if you have no money at all. I will say, if you have the money to pay for things, you will start to understand that you're supposed to pay for things. That also keeps a lot of material free for people, because a lot of us will do the kind of can't remember what they call it in the movies, one for me, one for you. So a lot of us will kind of have I want to say it's a set rule. And if people are doing this type of work and they don't require the money, because they either have money coming in from other places, they have trust funds, they have a lot of money that they have anyway, and they don't require money, they won't charge money because they don't require it to live. But if you do require money to actually live right now, we're just still a money society, we will charge money for that stuff. I will charge money for stuff that's one-on-one. Anything I do for the collectives, for the public, I do it for free. So those are kind of rules that I had seen. I'm going to call them a rule, a guideline, but it was a guideline also other people set, and that kind of felt right. If I'm going to share for the masses, it's going to be free. When I'm doing more in-depth stuff, one-on-one personal stuff with people, then I charge for that. I charge for classes. I might do some free Q&As here and there, which I'm going to get into more in 2024, then in 2023, 2024. So kind of look at what phase you're in. Look at what you were willing to pay for, and now what you're kind of afraid to pay for. And when I say afraid, we have to bust the fear of paying for it. And a lot of times, there are a lot of tests in here. Are you going to spend the money? A lot of tests in here. Are you going to spend the money? Are you going to trust when your universe says buy that class? The universe says you need to go to this place. It can also, anything you're spending money on to further activate your consciousness. Take this vacation. Are you going to listen? Are you going to listen? Now, I do want to throw this in. There does become a point where we have to be completely on cash. We cannot live on credit, because credit keeps us very tied to the human realities. So we kind of work on cash. The money comes in, you get it. If you have the money in your account and you're supposed to do it, even though that money would be slated for the rent, the mortgage, the car payment, but you feel strongly, I'm supposed to go do this. The test is, will you go do that? And then watch the money come in from other places. Watch the money get replenished. It is the funniest thing. But a lot of people won't believe it till they see it happen. The more generous we are, the more money that will come in. But we can't do it because I want more money to come in. That puts a taint. It puts a taint on the whole thing. It's a distorted reason to want it, and that's why we only can go so far with trying to manifest from our human consciousness of what we want. We can only go so far with that because there's so much distortion to it. There's so much stuff in there that's not of its purest or highest place. So I'm going to leave it at that. This is a little bit longer, but I kind of wanted to see, they call it bougie on a budget. My consciousness. What do I do with consciousness on a budget? And when do I throw the budget out the window? When do I keep the budget? Should there be a budget? What's going on? What's free? What should I pay for? What do I not pay for? How it shifts in between. So hopefully that will give you a couple phases. I'm sure there's phases I missed in there. So hopefully that'll give you some guidelines. So, okay. Keep practicing the art of intuition.